now. Perfect. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. I know it's kind of a crazy time right now, so we appreciate you coming to hear about some post-secondary education information. Just some housekeeping stuff, I guess, a little bit before we start, just, Zoom etiquette, I guess. We've turned the chat function on right now. Any chat will be coming directly to me. So I'll be monitoring the chat for any questions that might come up throughout the session. Feel free to chat or ask the questions throughout the session. You don't have to wait till the end, and we'll be answering the questions at the end out loud. Otherwise, your mics and cameras have all been turned off for the time being. So use the chat function. All right, so I'll introduce all four of us. We'll start with Mark. He is the guidance counselor, or one of the guidance counselors who work in the academic advising office at Access. He has experience both in the youth sector and now in the adult sector. I'm Candace. I as well have worked at the adult sector and the youth sector. Right now I'm a guidance counselor at St. John's High School. There's Chris Kwok. He's a guidance counselor. Again, I shouldn't keep saying this. We all have experience both at the adult sector and youth sector. So Chris is currently at St. Lambert International and Centennial Regional High School, and Eliane is currently at Heritage Regional High School. And our role as guidance counselors, we work for the Riverside School Board, but are dispatched to our high schools. Our roles are to provide support and guidance to any and all students who are making decisions for, post-secondary education. So first off, we wanted to sort of go through how to get your high school diploma, what is needed for your students to graduate. So credits start accumulating in secondary 4. So your secondary 4 and 5 classes are the classes that students start accumulating credits for. They need a total of 54 credits in order to get their diploma. 20 of those credits need to come from their secondary 5 classes. All classes help students accumulate these credits. So everything from your English classes to your drama classes to your gym, your phys ed classes, all classes have credits associated with them. In addition to needing those 54 credits to graduate from high school, there's specific classes that the Ministry of Education requires students to pass in order to graduate from high school. And we've highlighted those classes here for you. There's a couple at the secondary 4 level. So you need your history, your science, your math, and your art credit. This doesn't necessarily mean visual arts. It could be any of our art credits. So some of them are dance, some of your students might be taking dance, some of them might be taking the visual arts, dance is included, drama is included. There are a bunch of options available for you within that art credit. Then at the secondary 5 level, you need English, French, and either ethics or physical education. You don't need both, although, like I just said, every class gets you credits. So the more credits you have under your belt, the better. I know I mentioned that secondary 4 is the first year that students can start accumulating credits. In some schools, so I'm thinking IB, I'm thinking TAG at Centennial specifically. Some students begin accumulating credits in their secondary 3 year, so grade 9, because they're taking advanced courses. I wanted to touch on the pre-work programs as well. So these are what you may have heard floating around Riverside as being called the work-oriented training pathway, or the CFER program, which I want to read it off my notes to make sure I'm getting the title correct. It's Centre de Formation en Entreprise et Récupération. So WOTP is at Centennial and CFER is at Heritage. And this is one of the alternative pathways in the secondary cycle 2 sector, where students can successfully obtain a diploma in pre-work training. And this gives them an edge on entering the workforce later on. We've included a link here, and we're going to look at making this PowerPoint a PDF for you as well, so that you can have these clickable links afterwards. So if you have any, if you want to seek more information about the pre-work programs, you can click on this link at a later date.
All right, so I'm going to be talking more about CEGEP, well, a little bit about the multiple options, and also a little bit about the admission, how to apply and stuff like that. So to begin with, I'm going to talk about some Anglophone CEGEP in the Greater Montreal area. So you probably already heard about those, but we have Dawson and Champlain, Vanier, John Abbott, Marianopolis, and LaSalle, which the two last ones are private. Vanier and John Abbott are part of the SRAM application, which is a Service Régional des Admissions du Grand Métropolitain, which is I'm going to be talking about a little bit later. But just to give you a little idea is when you apply to those CEGEP, there's a group of CEGEPs, and you need to apply to one of those, and they function as a round system. So basically, there's going to be 3 rounds. The first round is going to be the one for March 1st, is when the date that we all know of, that we all heard about, is the March 1st. That's when the first round for SRAM CEGEP is. For Dawson and Champlain, it is only for the March 1st application. We need to remember, because those Dawson and Champlain do not function with the round system, neither do the private CEGEP as well. So now the other Francophone CEGEP that I wanted to mention, those are only on the South Shore. You probably all heard about Édouard-Montpetit, which is one of the biggest CEGEPs on in Quebec, but particularly on the South Shore. So that's Édouard-Montpetit. We have Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Saint-Hyacinthe, Sorel-Tracy, and Ellis, which is a private CEGEP as well on the South Shore, that's located in Longueuil. So we have different types of programs at the CEGEP level. So we have the pre-university program, and we have the technical program. So the difference between the two, well, the pre-university says it, right? It's a pre-university program. So basically, you will develop skills to better be prepared for the university. So obviously, you're going to learn also some knowledge about the program that you'll be interested in, depending on which program you're going to pick. I just listed a few of the examples that you'll find in the pre-university branch, we could call, because it's really like 2 types of programs. And then within those programs, we have a few options. Just to talk a little bit about maybe the springboard, which is something that we don't necessarily hear that often. This is a program that actually prepares you. So it's a CEGEP level program, but it actually prepares you to jump into the program of your choice after that. So sometimes it is a 1 semester program, otherwise it is a 1 year, it depends. And then you can, after that, better your grades and choose the program of your choice after that. The double DCS is basically, the DCS stands for Diploma of College Studies. This is where you could pick, let's say, a science pre-university mixed with art pre-university. So it'll be longer. It won't be a 2-year program, because the pre-universities programs all last 2 years. well, if you're taking full semester all the time, because you can also have less class, you can pick less classes per semester, so that would obviously take you longer to complete, but usually it would last 2 years. So the double DCS would last 3 years usually. The technical program is actually a program that prepares you for the workforce. So you'll be trained and ready to enter the workforce after that 3-year program. So it is really some, we could call it, let's say, like a qualifying diploma, because with that diploma, you can either choose to enter the workforce after that 3 years, or decide to pursue at the university level. And some universities also have some entente, which is, let's say you did a technical program and you're pursuing your education in that same field at the university level, you'll have some courses that can be credited towards that. So that's also something that's nice to think. It is particularly interesting for students who are who want shorter programs, who want to be trained and enter the workforce quicker compared to a pre-university program. Oh yeah, just to go back quickly, sorry. Those are just again a few options that are out there that are interesting to explore. Now, talking about exploration, sometimes it is hard to know what's out there, which CEGEP offers what. So Pigma is actually a website that centralizes all the CEGEPs across Quebec. It gives you all the programs also that are possible, and you can choose to explore by if you're set on the program that you would like to apply to, you can type your program in the search box, and then he'll show you which CEGEP actually offers that program. Otherwise, you can also use the explore all the options, and this is nice because you can decide to filter the Pigma on the Pigma website. Let's say you play football and you're really interested in playing football at the CEGEP level. Well, you can actually filter the CEGEP of your choice with the division of the football team that you would like to participate in. So that's also a great tool to use just to explore, to know what's out there. The important thing to note, though, is that let's say you do the research in English, and then you see all the names of the programs, and then you're, oh, I'm actually interested in that one. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that the program is given in English, even if it's stated on the website as like the title is in English. So that's something really important to look for. It will be mentioned when you're clicking on the CEGEP. It actually states the language of instruction on the website. So that's something that you will be able to see by yourself. All right, so those are important dates that like I mentioned earlier, those are for the SRAM CEGEP only, because, well, March 1st, like I mentioned, is for all CEGEP across Quebec, but the other dates that I mentioned there are for the CEGEP who are associated with the SRAM system, which functions by rounds. So first round, you'll need to apply by March 1st. Then March 25th is when they're actually going to release the places available in the second round. That's the second round. You only participate if you didn't get accepted in your first choice of CEGEP and first option. That's something important to mention, is that on SRAM, yes, you pick one CEGEP, but you also only pick one choice, okay? And then the second choice and third choice is actually with the rounds that you're gonna do. That's how you actually pick for a second choice or a third choice. But if you get the first choice, then you don't participate in the other rounds. As for Dawson and Champlain, you'll actually pick a CEGEP of your choice, and then you'll have to pick first choice and then second choice. So that's how Dawson and Champlain, for example, will function. Some private colleges as well will function that way. An important thing to mention as well for the SRAM, as I mentioned, all the CEGEP that are part of the SRAM, you can only pick one CEGEP out of all of those options. But you can apply to Dawson and Champlain, and it's not because in previous years they were actually centralized on one application system. So you had to pick between Champlain and Dawson. Now it's not the case. I believe it's been 2 or 3 years that's not the case anymore. So now they're really independent. So you can make an application at Dawson and at Champlain without a problem. You can really pick the one, well, you can even apply to both. So, and you could apply also as a third option. Let's say you want to apply to SRAM. So the popular ones that we have in the English sector are Vanier and John Abbott usually. We also have some students sometimes that decide to go to Champlain, but Lennoxville. So that's something to be mindful. Champlain-Lennoxville is the one in Sherbrooke, okay? So sometimes people, and we have that every year, so I'm mentioning, and it's super important, okay? Every year, we have a student who apply on the SRAM system at Champlain, thinking it's the Champlain that we all know of in St. Lambert. But that's Champlain-Lennoxville, which is located close to, well, it's in Lennoxville, but we know Sherbrooke as the main city. So that's important to know that Champlain-St. Lambert is the one that you actually apply on their particular website, on their specific website. So to go back on the SRAM, I did a little loop here to go back on the SRAM system now. You will know the verdict around April 2nd. For Dawson and Champlain, it depends. It will be around those days that you'll get an answer as well, but sometimes it's earlier than that. Sometimes people get their answer by the end of March. It all depends, but it is to be expected around those dates. You will find the answer on the OmniVox. So where you're going to actually register, which is going to come later in the presentation, that's where you're going to find your if you're accepted or you need to participate to the second round for the SRAM CEGEPs. So yeah, then basically, if you look at the pale blue ones are really the dates that you really need to be mindful. These are the deadlines to participate to the rounds. So that's the most important dates that you need to remember. Okay, so what you actually need to apply. So it is a little different with Dawson and Champlain and with the SRAM. So I'm going to perhaps name the main differences between all of them. So the permanent code, this is something that if I recall correctly, you will need regardless of which CEGEP you're gonna apply. So this permanent code actually is super similar to your Medicare card number, like their assurance maladie. It's super similar, but it's different. So that's really important to be careful with that. That number will be found on your achievement record. So, like when you have the report card, which is something, but then at the end of the year for CEC4 and at the end of the year of CEC5, the ministry actually sends you an achievement record at home. So that you will get through the mail. Okay, well, like not the emails, but really like the mail. Okay, so you'll find that at the top of the paper, the achievement record, and it actually starts with the three first letters of your last name and the first letter of your first name, followed by 8 numbers. So that's the number that you need to remember. That's your permanent code. Well, your child's permanent code. Other thing that's important will be the birth certificate for Dawson and Champlain. They actually ask for the birth certificate. So that document will be uploaded on the actual Omnivox, okay? So that's where you're gonna, well, it's like kind of a portal, that's where you're gonna upload it. So they don't take paper, you don't need to send it through mail. It's easy click, you upload it as a PDF, I believe is the best format to actually submit it. This year, it's a little different, okay? So as we all know, with COVID-19, it was a particular year, let's call it that way. With the final grades for CEGEP, usually students had a pass or fail on the achievement record. So we have an entente with the ministry to actually submit the report cards. So you'll see if you apply on SRAM, you apply on Dawson, you'll have a little note saying that, because you have to say from which school you actually come from, you'll see a note at the bottom saying you don't need to submit your documents. Your school is part of the entente and they're actually giving the grades for you. However, for Champlain, they actually ask you to upload the report card for CEGEP and CEGEP as well. That was announced, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, or last week, I can't recall, but it's been a recent decision where they actually ask you to upload those documents as well. So make sure that if you apply to Champlain, you upload those documents. But don't worry though, when you apply, it usually states which document you actually need to upload in order for your file to be completed. So that's something reassuring. You also need a credit card to pay the fee, the $30 fee. So that's something to mention that for SRAM, it's a $30 fee. For Champlain, it's a $30 fee. For Dawson, also, it's a $30 fee. So you're looking at $90 if you wish to apply through all three options, let's say. So that's something to be mindful of. And super important thing, when you guys register, it is important to remember your application file number. So whenever I apply, let's say with a student, what I ask them to do, or what I tell them to do when they're doing it at home, is to take a picture of the actual number, because on our cell phone, we're sure not to lose it. So to actually screenshot or take a picture of it, and just to be sure that you have that number saved preciously. Important thing as well, when you apply, I say screenshot, but not on a cell phone, on an iPad. Sometimes those devices are a little tricky when you apply to those platforms. So if you can actually use a desktop or a laptop, that would be preferable for sure. All right, so this is actually where you need to apply if you want to apply to one of the CEGEP that are part of SRAM. So I keep saying SRAM. All the CEGEP that are actually part of SRAM are listed on their website. But as I mentioned, the most popular that we know of would be Vanier and John Abbott in the English sector. You'll also find Édouard-Montpetit, Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Saint-Hyacinthe, Sorel-Tracy are also part of SRAM CEGEP. So to be clear, just to repeat it again, if you want to apply, if you're thinking about, oh, I want to go to John Abbott, I want to go to Vanier, you'll need to pick one or the other, because the CEGEP that are part of that group, you need to pick one. So this is the actual website that you'll need to apply, and it's pretty straightforward. You'll see apply for admission. You click there, create an account, and then they'll guide you through the steps. Now, if you're looking at applying to Dawson, Champlain, St. Lambert, and private CEGEP, you'll look on their respective website. Okay, so you'll see, you'll go on the website, and usually they'll say future students or apply, and then you'll see where to actually input your information, and that's the way to go for those CEGEPs. All right, so that's the step after acceptance. Sorry. So that's for after acceptance. Individualized education plans, so as we all call it, IEPs. Important thing to mention is that in the youth sector, we are able to implement an IEP for students that doesn't necessarily have a diagnosis. They're just, let's say, they would need extra support. They would need extra time or any adaptations that we feel like would be beneficial for a student because they're struggling academically or they're having social emotional difficulties or some sorts. There's all kinds of reasons to actually have an IEP. That's something that we can implement in the youth sector. However, when you get to CEGEP or college, like we use it as the same. So when you get there, the IEP doesn't follow, okay? What I mean by that is that you need, in college, you actually need an official diagnosis in order to be able to get adaptation in college. Okay, so that's something that's super important, is that yes, that perhaps they'll ask to see the IEP in in high school. They'll ask like to have the file, like just to see, but based on what the diagnosis of your child is, they will put in place the measures really based on what the diagnosis is. So that's after acceptance. You would need to contact the CEGEP. Usually it's pretty straightforward. It's on the website as well. You'll see specialized services or extra support, or it's pretty straightforward on the respective websites. And then that's where you're going to have to provide, after contacting them, they'll ask you to provide the professional diagnosis report. And then after that, we'll follow a meeting with the support team. It's probably going to be a Zoom meeting this year or some sorts. And then after that, there's really the implementation of the measures based on the official diagnosis. So that's something that to be mentioned, because unfortunately, there's sometimes some surprise because you're used to having an IEP in the youth sector, but it wasn't based on an official diagnosis. When you're at the college level, you really need to provide some sort of official report from it can be like from a psychologist, it can be from medical doctor, it can be from a speech and language pathologist. So that's these are all valid reports to submit at college. So that was it for me. Now I'm passing along the flambeau to my colleague.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Mark Cabral, and I'm a guidance counselor at Access Adult Education and Vocational Training Center. So just to talk briefly about Access, Access is technically one school, but we do have 5 centers or locations across the South Shore, each one offering different kind of programming. So our Access Cleghorn Center in St. Lambert, Access Cleghorn is where we really have all our high school level courses that are needed either for prerequisites for a vocational training program, for a high school diploma, as well as CEGEP prerequisites. So the advanced math and science courses from both secondary 4 and 5 that certain CEGEP programs require. That can be completed at Access if your child did not complete it in their years of high school. In terms of vocational training at Access Cleghorn, we have vocational training programs that fall under the administration, commerce, and computer technology sector, as well as the health services sector. And I'll go more into our vocational training programs a bit later on. So Access Guillemot in Longueuil is where it's essentially our garage. It's where we have our vocational training program that falls under the motorized equipment maintenance sector, so essentially automobile mechanics. Access Darwin in St. Julie is where we have our building and public works program, specifically stationary engine mechanics. So Access Darwin, our program for stationary engine mechanics is actually housed in the Centre de Formation Professionnelle des Patriotes, associated with the Centre de Service Scolaire des Patriotes. So the building, if you were ever to go there, it doesn't say Access Darwin, it really is the CFP des Patriotes. We also have our Access Royal Oak Centre in St. Hubert. And this is where we have our new kind of program that we launched last year, I believe, our virtual classroom for both secondary 4 and 5 French, allowing students to complete secondary 4 and 5 French online and at their own pace. And in terms of the vocational training programs, we have programs falling under, again, administration, commerce, computer technology, building and public works, as well as our skills training certificate in the school daycare educator program. And lastly, but certainly not least, we also have Access Taschereau in Brossard. And Access Brossard really is our language learning center. It's where we offer people pre-literacy English classes as well as francisation classes. So as you can imagine, the majority of our students at Access Brossard are recent arrivals and immigrants to Quebec who are working on learning the language. So in terms of studying in adult general education, there is a specific age requirement that is that needs to be met for all students across the province, whether they're studying in an adult center in English or in French. This is kind of the age requirement. A student needs to be 16 years old on June 30th of the academic year that they start. So let's say, for example, if a student was looking at wanting to start in Access in August 2021 for our fall 2021 semester, the student would need to be 16 years old by June 30th, 2021. So as you can imagine, any students who, let's say, were born in July, August, September, those are the kind of the groups of students that almost have to wait 1 year, almost when they're closer to 17, to be able to start an adult education. And again, this is true for students wanting to come to the Access Cleghorn Center, where they're looking at completing classes and credits to obtain their high school diploma, as well as advanced math and science secondary 4 and 5 courses needed for specific CEGEP programs. So when we talk about a high school diploma from the youth sector versus the adult sector, there are a few differences in terms of graduation criteria. So just like the youth sector, a high school diploma from the adult sector still requires the student to accumulate a total of 54 credits from both secondary 4 and 5 courses, 20 of which must come from secondary 5 courses. And much like the youth sector, a student needs to complete the languages Sec 4 and 5, as well as math secondary 4. So the changes come with specific classes. So whereas in the youth sector, a student needs to complete science and technology secondary 4, in the youth sector, in the adult sector rather, a student needs to obtain at least 4 credits in what we call the math, science, and technology category. So at Access, we do have computer technology classes that do give students credits that would help them fill out this math, science, and technology category. As well, if, for example, a student in the youth sector were to fail science and technology Sec 4, but were able to pass, let's say, CST Math Secondary 5, when that student makes the transition from youth to adult, that math, science, and technology category would be taken care of by virtue of that student completing math CST 5. And lastly, social universe. So again, unlike the youth sector where secondary 4 history is the graduation requirement, in adult education, it becomes the social universe category, in which a student again must obtain a minimum of 4 credits. So at Access, of course, we do offer secondary 4 history, but other social universe classes that we've offered this semester, for example, have been an economics class or what is called a Mad World class, which is a more of a contemporary history class. So those are some kind of important key differences in terms of a high school diploma from the adult sector. So in a little bit about the scheduling in terms of classes at Access Cleghorn when it comes to high school level classes and CEGEP prerequisites. So in general, we have 2 main semesters. We have our fall semester, which typically runs from the end of August to the end of January. And we have our winter semester that runs from the end of January up until June. So we kind of mirror CEGEP semesters in that sense. And as you can see, we have a maximum of 2 classes per day. We have a morning class that goes from 8:30 to 11:30 and an afternoon class that goes from 12:20 to 3:20. So in terms of the maximum amount of classes a student can take, as long as there's no conflict in the classes a student registers for, a student can take as many as they want. Typically, a student is able to take a maximum of 5 classes so long as the scheduling works properly. So let's say, for example, if a student were to be ending their kind of high school career in June, missing, let's say, just English 5, as you can see on the schedule, English 5 takes place on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays in the morning from 8:30 to 11:30. And if they were registered for English 5 this semester, they would be going at the top from January 27th until June 2021. So that's what our current winter semester is. So this has been our schedule for the last few semesters. But of course, there is always the possibility that the schedule changes. Depending on new courses that the ministry rolls out that they do expect us to teach in adult ed. So for example, the Science 3 course that takes place on Thursday afternoon, it's a single block on Thursday afternoon only. This is a new course that we were teaching since last semester because the ministry has mandated all adult ed centers in the province to offer secondary 3 science. So another big difference between courses in the youth sector and the adult sector is in the adult sector, we work by module. And basically a module is a topic or a chunk of material. And there are multiple modules that make up a quote unquote complete course. So let's say, for example, a student coming out of high school who's just missing English 5 for their high school diploma. English 5 is comprised of 3 modules. And in a given semester at Access, we've scheduled that a teacher teaches all 3 modules within the semester. So a student has the possibility of completing an entire course in a semester. And a student would need to complete the 3 modules in order to get a complete English 5 and then be granted their high school diploma, assuming that's the only thing that they're missing. So let's say, if I were to take, for example, ministry courses, secondary for history, math, or science, unlike the youth sector, where a course is taught through an entire year, and then an accumulative exam is given to the student at the end of the year, in adult ed, we break up that content through modules. And basically, these modules are non-cumulative and they're independent topics of each other. So even though one module obviously is going to be related to the other, like you don't need to complete one module before being able to move on to the second module. They're kind of distinct chunks, and all of those chunks need to be completed for a complete course. So vocational training. So kind of the recognized standard definition of vocational training in Quebec is a specialized training program for a skilled job that requires a specific set of manual skills. And the vocational training programs that I'm talking about in the presentation this evening are programs that lead specifically to a Diploma of Vocational Studies, a DVS, or a bit more well-known in French, Diplôme des études professionnelles, or a DEP. So in Quebec, there are over 100 vocational training programs divided into 21 different kind of work sectors. And these programs are offered obviously in both English and French across the province. However, not every vocational training program is offered in English. Just kind of given the reality of where we live and the workforce. The government hasn't translated every single vocational training program into English. And then in terms of the length of time, vocational training programs kind of take about 1 to 2 years to complete. So in terms of being admissible or eligible for a vocational training program, it does vary between the different vocational training programs, but in general, a secondary school diploma will open the door to any vocational training program. If a student has their high school diploma, they're eligible for any vocational training program leading to a DVS or a DEP. But for students who don't have their high school diploma, the next kind of category of admission is successful completion of English, French, and math. So if a student doesn't have a high school diploma, but they do have secondary for English, French, and math successfully completed, most vocational training diplomas are open to that student. And instead of having to complete their high school diploma right away, they could actually go into their vocational training program of their choice immediately. And then there are some programs in Quebec that just require secondary 3 English, French, and math. And so now we'll go into a bit more detail about the programs that we have. So at Access Cleghorn and St. Lambert, in our administration, commerce, and computer technology sector, we offer DEPs in accounting and secretarial studies, as well as kind of a special double DEP called our Executive Assistant Program that takes about 2 years, but at the end of that 2 years, a student will have a DEP both in accounting and secretarial studies. And then in terms of the health services, we also offer the Health Assistance and Nursing Program, which will allow a student after the completion of both the program and a certification exam to work as a licensed practical nurse or infirmière auxiliaire in Quebec hospitals as well as clinics. So health assistance and nursing is kind of one of those special programs in which a student needs to complete English Secondary 5, as well as French 4 and Math 4 to be eligible. Again, obviously, if they have their high school diploma, all these programs are open. But kind of quote unquote, the minimum academic requirements are successful completion of English 5 and then French and Math 4. And then just going back a bit for accounting and secretarial, the kind of minimum requirements are secondary 4 English, French, and Math to be eligible. We also have the institutional and home care assistance program, which allows a student to work as a préposé aux bénéficiaires in a hospital. And to be honest, I don't know what the terminology in English is, or to work as a home care attendant in a CLSC. The home care attendant being a healthcare professional that sometimes goes to a patient home who, for example, may have reduced mobility, so may require a home care attendant to kind of just check in on them a few times a week to make sure that they have clean clothes and bedding in case an activity of daily living such as laundry is difficult for them, making sure that that particular patient is taking their medication, has their medication, and sometimes, again, depending on what the what's going on with the patient, a home care attendant is also trained to cook a few meals to help assist that patient. And lastly, we have the Pharmacy Technical Assistance DEP, which allows a student to work as a pharmacy technical assistant either in a pharmacy in a hospital or clinic, or in a community pharmacy like Pharmaprix, Jean Coutu, etc. So again, at our garage in Longueuil, this is where we have our automobile mechanics program. So training students to work in a garage with kind of regular size automobiles, the 4-door sedans, 4-wheel drives. So this is really just for kind of regular quote unquote cars. For a student who might want to, let's say, work on bigger trucks or heavy vehicles, that's a different DEP, which I can also talk about how to find different DEPs a bit later. And then at Access Darwin in Saint-Julie, that's again where we have our stationary engine mechanics program, sometimes commonly referred to as power engineering. And these students learn to work with HVAC systems. So heating, air conditioning, ventilation, cooling, machines working with water pumps, steam pumps. A student who completes a DEP in stationary engine mechanics really learns to do maintenance on these bigger machines that are part of like let's say a larger buildings such as hospitals, skyscrapers in the city that in which the air conditioning systems are like much larger and require specific knowledge and maintenance to make sure they're running properly. And finally, at the Access Royal Oak Center in St. Hubert, this is where we offer our DEPs in professional sales, masonry bricklaying, as well as the skills training certificate in school, the school daycare educator program. So talking about the school daycare educator program, so a skills training certificate differs from a DEP in the sense that this program was specifically developed by the ministry for those individuals wanting to work in a school-based daycare. So I would say a lot of our elementary schools, for example, offer daycare services to, let's say, the younger siblings of students who go there who may not quite be school age yet. And specifically to work in a school-based daycare, you would need to complete this school daycare educator program at Royal Oak. This skills training certificate, for example, would not be enough or recognized to work in, let's say, a community-based daycare. This is really just to work in a school-based daycare in elementary schools in the province. So obviously, I said at the beginning that there are over 100 vocational training programs. And at Access, we do not have all of them. No vocational training center offers every vocational training program. So this website here, inforoutefpt.org, this is really the Google search of all vocational training programs in the province. And there are a few different ways to kind of use InfoRoute. Obviously, if you want more information on a program in which you're already interested in, you can really just type in the name of the program in that search bar right there, hit enter, click on the vocational training program's name, and then it'll give you more information about that specific program. The program objectives, the admission conditions, the specific modules or topics a student would be completing in that program, and as well, when you do search a DEP, on the left-hand side of the page, there's a button that says educational organizations offering the program. And then if you click that, you kind of get the list of all the centers that offer that DEP in the province. Obviously, if a student is still kind of in the career exploration phase, may know that they want to do a vocational training program because they feel that CEGEP is not for them, but is not sure what programs are offered, they can actually, below that search bar on the InfoRoute page where it says vocational training, they can actually click on vocational training and legitimately get the laundry list of every DEP offered in the program, and can go through all 9 pages of the DEP, just look at the names, clicking on ones that sound interesting to them for more information. But I mean, in case those 9 pages seem a bit daunting for a student, you can modify the search criteria to get a bit lower. So you can modify it by the language. So DEP is just offered in English or just offered in French, by administrative region in Quebec, by work sector. So it kind of can help a student narrow their search a bit. So the one thing that I would kind of bring attention to when looking at DEPs, geography is a bit important when we are looking at vocational training programs, because the government will only allow a vocational training center to run a specific vocational training program based on what the needs of the work sector are around that vocational training center. So for example, one of kind of the more interesting sounding DEPs, for example, in Quebec, is diamond drilling. But when a student clicks diamond drilling and then looks for the centers that offer it, the only centers that offer it are located in Nord du Québec, because unsurprisingly, I don't believe we have any diamond mines in the Montérégie. So that's sort of one thing that you want to keep in the back of your mind, that geography does kind of play an important role in the vocational training programs offered in your region. And I think that's it for me.
Yep. So thanks, Mark, and thanks, Eliane, for covering the CEGEP and the adult ed. So now that we've covered those two options, let's also look at a third option that some students might opt for after leaving RSB, and that is entering the workforce. So for a variety of reasons, some students might decide to enter the workforce right after high school. And the typical steps involve thinking of what you want to do, preparing your CV, looking for a job, submitting an application, and going for an interview. Now, there is a method that we call the self-directed approach, which is when an adolescent decides to go through this process on their own, so without any additional support. And to do this, they can use one of the tools that we are very happy to offer here at Riverside. It is My Blueprint. So My Blueprint is a software that's available to all our RSB students. Some of our students have already created accounts already, depending on the school activities and whether or not a teacher or an academic advisor has presented this to their cohort at the moment. And this is software that includes many good tools to help students plan for their career, such as some assessments or surveys to help them discover their interests. It also contains some job-specific compatibility surveys. So after helping a student identify their interests, it matches them up with some potential jobs that would fit those interests. Again, it's a great career exploration tool because it has a library of almost all relevant professions out there. So they can just consult what each job involves, take a look at some of the stats, the trends in the market, hear some interviews with some of the people who work in those industries. Another very useful tool offered by My Blueprint is the CV building tool. So it will prompt our students to enter information in certain boxes and then later on generate a full-on CV that they can then print out and use in their job search process. It also has a lot of other activities that sometimes teachers might want to involve in their curriculum, where it helps students understand the basics of money management, improve their financial literacy, and just help them plan their everyday budget. And lastly, it also allows to discover what local employers are looking for with job search tools. So there is a job bank with up-to-date listings that are tied directly to one's occupational interests. So once a student has completed their assessment, identifying their interests and whatever job is compatible with that interest, it will then filter a lot of the results when they're trying to look for listings that are jobs in their geographic location. So this is a quick overview of what the My Blueprint offers. Like I mentioned, they do have surveys and questionnaires that allow students to essentially figure out who they are, who am I? And again, based on their interests and aptitudes that are identified in these surveys, it will then match them with occupations. So here we can see that some of the occupations that are not, like for instance, this student is a 98% match. And following this, a student can then look into further detail each profession, have a look at their overview, whereas the education requirements, how's the financial outlook, and then real talk is a section where there's a lot of information through people from that professional group, maybe offering to give an outlook on the day in the life of a research assistant, for example. And of course, like I mentioned, they do have the CV builder. So this is an example of a CV that was built using the tool that's offered by my blueprint. And here's a quick outlook on the budgeting tool that helps students learn more about financial literacy. And so to create my blueprint is fairly simple. You just have to go visit myblueprint.ca/Riverside, click the sign up button, select your school, and then follow the steps to create your account. Now, there is a possibility that, like I mentioned, your child already has an account that's created with the school. And we've introduced my blueprint, I think, a year or 2 years ago. So in certain schools, certain cohorts, certain classrooms have already integrated this for their students. So ask your child, see if they recognize this logo. If not, when they're registering for the first time, please have them find their permanent code, as we mentioned before, which we can also find on the report card. And when registering, please keep in mind to use your child's personal email instead of the RSB email, because after they leave RSB, they will still have the opportunity to access my blueprint as a tool. But the RSB email might expire, so it's important to have your personal Gmail, Hotmail, or iCloud email to use instead. So that was more of the self-directed approach. Now, certain adolescents might prefer to have some support, some help in this difficult process. So that's when we look at some of our community members, community partners. So one of the most major organizations out there is Carrefour Jeunesse Emploi. With offices in many cities, this nonprofit organization supports young people, 16 to 35, by mentoring them, motivating them in the pursuit of their professional projects, so that they can find their place in the job market. Now, the services that they offer, which is all free, include some conferences about some topics, networking activities so that they can meet potential employers, workshops such as how to prepare for Zoom interviews, how to build your CV. And for all our students who might not be 100% sure what they want, Carrefour Jeunesse Emploi also offer free career counseling, so they can speak with counselors to help them find out what their plan is. Again, maybe they can also give them some questionnaires to identify their interests and aptitudes, and just have a general discussion on the job exploration process. And of course, they do help with job search. They do have their own job bank. They will also assist with the CV building, the cover letter writing, and interview coaching. Also notably, they also offer entrepreneurship projects just to promote that in our youth. For instance, for aspiring artists, some Carrefours will offer a few times during the year before COVID an art gallery exhibition. So artists can bring their pieces, exhibit it in their community, and maybe gain some coverage, and maybe get a few of their pieces sold. Like I mentioned, there are offices in many cities around South Shore and Montreal. So here are just the links to a few of them in our major cities. So St. Hubert, Brossard, La Prairie, Iberville de Saint-Jean, Montreal. Please note that the Brossard link is not called Carrefour Jeunesse Emploi because it has merged with other organizations, but offered exactly the same services. Now, these are other organizations that provide the similar services, all free and around the area. We have Place à l'Emploi, covering Longueuil and Riverside. They offer career exploration services, job search services, CV building, interview prep, and they have a lot of workshops and events. Nowadays, they still continue these workshops and events, but from a virtual environment. Next, we also have emploijeunesse.org, which is based in Montreal. And what distinguishes them from the rest of the list is they have partnerships with businesses in the Montreal area. We also have Yes Montreal, which is a career development and job hunting assistance. I believe this is for students 18 and up. Lastly, especially nowadays, it might be difficult for a student to find employment right away. So I thought it'd be important to include the Centre de Bénévolat de la Rive-Sud. So it offers volunteer opportunities on the South Shore. So for students who might not be ready to find paid employment or can't find paid employment, they can still keep themselves busy through volunteer work, which also helps build their CVs and work experience. Next, I also like to mention our students with special needs. So SDEM CEMO is an organization that assists students with special needs to find employment. This is their website. And essentially what they do is they offer a very individualized service to support individuals throughout the job search process. So if their clientele is mainly people with a recognized diagnosis. This diagnosis can include autism, ADHD, epilepsy, anxiety, OCD, dyslexia, and the list is quite long. So you can see that more on their website. But essentially what it is that for students who with special needs who want to enter the workforce, we'll make an appointment with the CIMO. They will be met with their own intake worker or conseiller. And then the conseiller will then sit down with the family and the student, analyze their diagnosis, take a look at some of their strengths, what are their interests and aptitudes, and then they will match them up with employers and local businesses. Because this organization, not only do they support the individual who are looking for work, they also support the employers so that they can welcome and accueillir these individuals so that they transition more easily. And afterwards, once they have matched an individual with a job, they don't just stop there. They also offer on-the-job support during the initial period. So they for a few weeks, they will have someone check in on their client at their workplace to see how things are going, problem solve, maybe find other places that are a better match. Now, aside from matching students with their local businesses, they also offer something very exciting that they call their adapted training programs. So these are not DEPs, but they are still programs that CIMO offers to train workers in specific areas, such as office work. They can also train them to work in senior residences. A very popular one is working with animals, such as pet shelters and pet shops, and also food preparation. And so these vary from duration of their training, but they're all come with certification. For example, the food preparation, although it's not a full DEP or vocational diploma, they still offer certificates in terms of hygiene and all the sanitary standards, so that they can then go on and to work in meal prep, for example. And so there are much more services that are detailed. And so I invite you, if you're interested, to take a look at their website, scm-cmo.org. And to make an appointment, you can just give them a call at the 1-800 number. Although their website is only available in French, I can guarantee that they do service the English population. They have serviced a lot of our RSV families. So just don't get too intimidated if you can't find the English button on their website. So that is pretty much it, what we had to cover for CEGEP, adult education, entering the workforce, and the special need population. So we thank you for your attention. Now we are going to open it up for questions.
So we already have some questions that have come through. I've been answering a bit individually in the chat, so continue to use the chat and we'll address the questions as they come in, but there's a couple that have come in throughout the presentation, so we'll start there. One question was more specific to CEGEP, just in terms of if your student is looking maybe more to go towards med school or engineering, which program at the CEGEP level would be the best choice for those students? I don't know if Eliane, you want to take that?
Sure. Let's say for engineering, there's also some technical programs that are available in that field. If you're looking more into like, it would be like a engineer technician. So it wouldn't be like engineering. If you're looking more like to pursue your education at the university level, then it would be pre-university in science.
Perfect.
Answers the question.
Yeah, it does. In terms of what, in terms of applying, so just to confirm, you can apply to Dawson and Vanier separately for the first round. Okay.
Yes.
So Dawson is its own
entity,
is its own, and then Vanier, because it's SRAM,
you pick one.
You pick one. Okay, perfect. In terms of students who are looking more towards, you know, what's the difference between CEGEP and potentially doing a grade 12? So I know some of our private schools offer a grade 12, more on, not our private schools, Riverside, but private schools in the Montreal area offer a grade 12 program. What would be the difference between going to CEGEP or going to a grade 12 program? I don't know if anybody wants to take that.
Well, because yes, there are some schools who give that 12-year. Sometimes also it's a way to like jump after that, let's say in the university of another province in Canada. So that's a way to do it, like to do 12th grade and then jump into a university, let's say like of Toronto or something like that. But if you were to do a 12-year here, there would be a preparatory year also at the university level, because here the CEGEP is basically, if we can like simplify this here, okay. So here, well, obviously we only have grade 11, right? So what they did is, and again, we're simplifying here, but they took the CEGEP is basically the 12th year that they took and 1 year away from the university level, and they summed it like they put them together, so it's like a pre-university program. So, but that I'm talking like ages ago, when they created the CEGEP. So the goal for the CEGEP was basically a school where you could get like technical training to really be prepared for the workforce, and also the pre-university programs where it was like a kind of a year, like our une année tampon that we say in French, like a year of transition, we could say, for you to try things, because it's a pre-university in a specific field, but you get to try all these classes too, to actually experience what it is exactly that you like in that branch. So that was the intent of CEGEP. So to go back on the answer, the question for the 12th year, I don't believe that it would be possible to enter directly the university program in Quebec. You would need to do some courses, but you could jump into another university though in another province of Canada.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Eliane, this might be another one for you because it's a CEGEP question.
Okay.
What is the difference between prerequisites and minimum admission requirements?
Okay, I'll go. So at the CEGEP level.
At the CEGEP level.
Okay. So the prerequisite, let's say they ask you for, you need the high math and chemistry and physics to get into the program. So that would be the prerequisites in order to apply to that program. Now the minimal requirement would be, well, usually they will use that in terms of grade as well. Like to say, okay, you need a 80 average to get into that program, or you need like an 85 to get into that program. So that would be, perhaps that would answer the question there, the difference between the two.
Okay, perfect. One of the questions that came up as well, this is more a general question, I can answer it. Are student diagnoses and reports that have already been provided to Riverside School Board, are they provided to the CEGEPs directly? And the answer there is no. They are not transferred directly because they are the student's property. And so that's something that the student or parents need to do themselves. However, should you have misplaced a copy of the report, should you need additional copies of the report, please reach out to one of us, depending on which school your student is from, and we can get you copies of those reports to you should you need a copy. Okay, I think that's all that came through while we were chatting. Now there's more questions that have come through since we've opened it up. Are programs rated to know which school has the best offering? I'm assuming that this is CEGEP specific.
I didn't hear the question, sorry.
Pardon, Eliane?
I didn't hear the question properly, sorry.
Are the programs rated so that families can know which school has the best offering? So if 3 schools offer health sciences, how do families know which is the better program, for example?
Yeah, so well, if we could say, like, back in the days, it was true. Like, you had to pick a CEGEP, and they, like, the CEGEP had a better reputation, let's say, and then, oh, like, your dossier from that CEGEP would be preferable. Like graduating from that CEGEP would be better. Now, I don't know, the R score, so cut I is what we hear most of the time. So R score is, like, I don't want to get into the details of how it is calculated, but it is every class that you are in CEGEP, okay? There's la force de groupe that they call, okay? So it actually says what is the strength of that class, and then you always compare to the average of that class that you're following, okay? So that R score basically standardize the actual grade, that a little bit like the ministry exams that we had, where well, obviously with COVID, like they're not happening, but that it is basically to standardize the grade, because perhaps the 80 in one class with that particular teacher is not the same 80 for another teacher in another CEGEP. So the R score actually comes down to it standardized the grade. So that's why it doesn't matter if you're like in Abitibi-Témiscamingue or you're like in John Abbott, you're in Dawson. It doesn't matter which CEGEP you're from. Your R score is standardized, and that's why that there's no such thing as a better CEGEP, because that R score gives like an equality of all chances when you're going to apply to university.
Perfect. Thank you. Will there be courses offered through Learn Quebec this summer? I would assume yes. I don't know if any of us, Mark or Eliane or Chris, if you guys have heard anything specifically about Learn Quebec's offering.
The pamphlet usually comes later in the year, I want to say. So it's not out yet, but that's the information I have. So
we haven't heard anything about them, but from what we understand and the fact that they're still offering services to our schools at the moment, we're guessing that they will likely offer some classes during the summer. Probably we're going to get more details closer to the May-June.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Then there's a question here for Sec 3 students. Is there a way for them to meet with us at our individual schools? So yes, that you can reach out to one of us. We'll be providing our contact info in a little bit here.
Mm-hmm. It is important to mention for the Sec 3s, we'll get to meet with you at some point. Now until March 1st, like we had mentioned, we're prioritizing the Sec 5, but after that date, so when we come back for March break, we'll have some time to meet with grade Sec 4 and Sec 3s as well.
For complementary courses, if I go into psychology, could I choose astronomy and forensic science as complementary courses?
So complementary courses are courses that are outside of the field that you are in. So let's say you're picking psychology. Well, you're not going to be able to pick a social science course. Okay, so complementary I was gonna say complementary services. Complementary courses are actually outside of the regular curricular that you would follow. Now, it depends on when the class is going to be given, if it's going to be given at that semester. So there's no way that we can guarantee. Plus, it's the CEGEP that actually offers the courses. So it's not a guarantee that you'll be able to follow it at the specific semester that you want to follow it.
Do you need secondary 3 credits to graduate secondary school? So I'll take that. No. So the only grades where credits start accumulating are secondary 4 and secondary 5. The exception to that is that in IB classes, so International Baccalaureate and TAG, so that's specific to Centennial, secondary 3 students actually take some secondary 4 classes. And so you could potentially start accumulating credits in your secondary 3 year, but that's because you're taking secondary 4 classes within that year. So all your regular secondary 3 classes, they do not start accumulating credits.
At Heritage, the ethic class in Sec 3 is actually a Sec 4 level ethics class, so you'll get credits for that class. But again, it's an exception, just like Ms. Toners mentioned.
Yep, that's also the same case at SLI. Sec 3 students are following a Sec 4 ERC class.
What is the average passing grade to go into mechanical engineering? Does anybody know that off the top of our heads?
That will, I think we have to look that up.
Yes, perhaps for some more like specific questions, that could be answered through emails.
Yeah.
Just because it's like
we don't have that answer at the top of our heads, and it's also it applies to very specific cases. So we're happy to answer those individually through email.
Yeah.
Are students offered career counseling in our high schools? What is the time frame for such meeting sessions? So yes, our students are offered variations of career counseling depending on their needs. So we are guidance counselors. So we work for the school board and are dispatched to individual high schools. There's also academic advisors within each of your high schools. So they are teachers who, part-time help students with, applying to CEGEP and going through some of the stuff that Chris talked about in terms of my blueprint and starting to sort of navigate through the world after high school. So there's different ways that students can access these services or different people that students can go to within their schools to access career counseling. If you want your student to meet specifically with one of us, we'll be providing our contact information in a little bit. Est-ce que vous connaissez un site où l'étudiant pourrait passer des tests d'orientation?
Donc, I'll answer this one. Les tests ou les questionnaires d'orientation sont pas offerts au public gratuitement. Ça doit être donné par un conseiller d'orientation, dont un de nous quatre. Donc, si vous pensez que votre enfant a besoin de ces questionnaires-là, vous pouvez juste nous contacter par courriel. On va céduler des rendez-vous, puis on va administrer le questionnaire à votre enfant personnellement, parce que il y a beaucoup d'étapes, puis on aime ça aussi offrir comme un service de plus que seulement juste de donner un site web.
Comme peut-être préambule, ce qui est intéressant, My Blueprint, comme Mr. Kwok parlait tout à l'heure, ça c'est vraiment intéressant. Il y a des tests sur ce site-là aussi, donc ça peut être comme une façon d'explorer un petit peu là, aussi là, par My Blueprint, comme c'était mentionné précédemment.
Okay, perfect. Are there any considerations for sort of private colleges and CEGEPs and financial assistance? So yes, I think most, if not all, CEGEPs have some sort of form of financial assistance, especially the private institutions. And Eliane, maybe you can help me out with this as well. I know that you can apply for government grants and bursaries, yes, depending on your financial situation. So that's something, again, that maybe that's something that one of us could help you out with in your individual schools moving forward.
Yeah. Typically, if we're looking at the loans and bursaries for the college studies, after you register, every CEGEP has their own financial aid officer or financial aid department. So once you've accepted and confirmed that you're going to that school, you can then ask for the contact information of their financial aid officer, and they will guide you through the process, because there is some paperwork to be filled out, and not only does the student to fill it out, the school also has to provide some kind of information, and typically each CEGEP will have someone to do that and accompany the student through it.
What is the criteria to get admission into CEGEP? Grades of Sec 4 and 5. Students with the student permit are eligible for the science and technology. So admission requirements are very much dependent on which program students are applying to. So, your general social sciences, at most CEGEPs usually hover around a 65-70% overall average. Then, going up the ladder, we're looking at maybe health, pure and applied, usually hovering around the 85 to 89%. averages. So it does depend on what program your student is looking at. Some programs are more competitive than others. So I know we were talking about technical programs versus pre-university programs. There are some programs where the admission requirements are higher than others. So that's something, again, that we can look at individually with your students, depending on which program they're looking at. I don't know, Eliane, if you wanted to touch on anything more there.
No, I think that covers it. I was actually, since we were referring to like the averages, I was trying to look in the documents to answer for the engineering thing. So if you give me since we did talk about the percentage and stuff, I'm looking through my documents just to mention it for the other previous question we had earlier. So I'll just need a minute for that.
Yeah, no problem. I'll go to another question. Let me know when you're good. If somebody is missing secondary 5 physics and they want to apply to a technique program, so I'm assuming a technical program, does he or she have to go through a temps plein session?
A temps plein session, meaning like the sport?
The springboard. Again, I think this may be a question that's better answered directly with one of us, depending on your students, the school that they're attending. But if, depending on the technical program that they're applying to, they might not need the secondary 5 physics. Sometimes, I'm thinking about nursing, for example, and maybe that's not the program you're talking about, but nursing only requires chemistry and not physics. So it really does depend on which technical program the student's applying to.
So to answer the question about the civil engineering mechanics, I think that was the title of the courses that we're looking for. You're looking at a 70 average approximately at Dawson.
Okay. Okay, hold on a second. Is the test the guidance counselor will do different from the one at My Blueprint? Yes.
Yep, the My Blueprint one
Short
is
answer.
so short answer, yes. The one offered by My Blueprint is more of a generic one, and the one offered by the guidance counselors is a lengthier one, and it's just 2 different products. And the guidance counselors offer might provide also more in-depth and more specific results.
We usually look a lot more at like work habits and types of scenarios or physical situations that your students might like to work in, not just sort of what programs are available at particular CEGEP. So we go a little bit more in depth. If a student's average isn't quite high enough due to a poor grade in a particular class, will they drill down to see how students performed in core courses such as math and science? So again, this sort of depends on which program your student is applying to. So obviously, if they're applying, for example, to a fine arts, at Dawson, for example, they're definitely going to look at the art grade, for example. But if your student is applying to a social science, they'll notice the maybe lower grade, but so that grade will go into the overall average for that student, but they will look more specifically at the classes that will be seen in the CEGEP program that your student's applying to. So they're going to look more specifically at math and science. If they're going into a more science math oriented program, they're going to look more at sort of the liberal arts general education courses if they're going into the social sciences. So every grade is included in the student's overall average, but then CEGEPs do look specifically at the courses that will be seen more in the program of their choice at CEGEP. What are the requirements for the business program? Also, which courses do the students take at Sec 5 to be accepted into CEGEP business? Does anybody know that off the top of their head?
Well, it depends because some programs, let's say like if we're looking at like entrepreneurship, which is a technical program, you will not need like the high math. So it really depends on which programs. What's really good to see is actually on the respective website of the CEGEP. They mention whenever you click on the programs that you're interested in, you'll see in requirements or admissions requirement, and you'll see the specific for each. It is also mentioned on Pigma, like the website that I was referring to earlier. When you click on the actual program that you're interested in, it states all the requirements. So if you need high math, you need regular math, you need CST, you need the physics, but not the chemistry, or vice versa. So you'll be able to see that on Pigma as well.
It's important to mention that although we're guidance counselors, we do this all the time, we don't always know top of our heads what are a specific program's prerequisites. So just like, to be honest, as we're talking right now, I am on the Champlain College website looking at the commerce option. And as Vivian mentioned, if you scroll down, it confirms that you need Sec 5 high math to get into commerce option at Champlain. And that's something that I also had to look up myself.
Mm-hmm.
So
while as the entrepreneurship, you wouldn't need it. So it really depends on the program you're looking at.
There were a couple questions as I was scrolling through asking about the recording of the session tonight. So yes, we have been recording it. Yes, we hope to have this posted somewhere or emailed out to the participants. So be on the lookout perhaps for an email explaining how to access this recording afterwards. I believe that is all the questions that have come through.